What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Michael and welcome to Fudge Muppet, your place for Elder Scrolls and Fallout lore discussions and builds. Today, I'm finally bringing you this 6th installment in our series, which you can jump into at any point in time really, called 5 Things We Want in Elder Scrolls 6. We've got some cool ideas to go over in this video, motivated by both our desire for a sensational Elder Scrolls 6 and of course the constant threats which have become a total meme in the top comments across these videos. If you want the chance to have your comment shown in the next video, be sure to tell us what will happen if we don't make a part 7, and also leave any other desires you have for Elder Scrolls 6. As you would have seen in the intro, you guys have really pushed for part 6, and I'll tell you what, there's no way I want Heimskir to narrate everything I do for the rest of my life, and I definitely do want to see Maik return in Elder Scrolls 6. I also value my cardiovascular health, so I'm not too keen on the idea of having a werewolf eat my heart for more werewolf perks, and I'd prefer if Argonians didn't look how they did in Oblivion. So again, for the sake of the Elder Scrolls franchise itself, let's dive right into 5 things we want in Elder Scrolls 6. Part 6. So the first desire we've got in this video is actually for the inclusion of more unique shops in Elder Scrolls 6. In Skyrim, there were a decent amount of stores and marketplaces, but it was more or less a blacksmith, a general goods store, an alchemy store, and some sort of court wizard, each selling very similar gear. Then there were occasionally marketplaces like in Riften where we saw a jewelry store, and that was cool. And there was also the clothing store, Radiant Raiment in Solitude. Radiant Raiment is basically a good example of a unique shop as it's unique to Solitude and has a good stock of nice aesthetic pieces. We want more of this in Elder Scrolls 6, almost in the same fashion as a game like Elder Scrolls for Oblivion. For example, in Oblivion, think of all the different stores there were in the Imperial City. There was a store just for armor with 2 shopkeepers, one for light armor and one for heavy armor. There was a store just for special shields, a jewelry store, and various general goods stores that actually stocked different kinds of things, such as one store having a unique enchanted katana. I think unique enchanted bought weapons should be added back to the game just for fun and to further incentivize actually using money in the game. So imagine if the game was set in High Rock and there was a very regal weaponry shop that sold a variety of high-end fine steel gear. There could just be a uniquely inscribed enchanted sword here available for purchase, which absorbs enemy stamina and slows the target for 10 seconds. There could be a conversation option regarding the sword, where the shopkeeper tells you the sword once belonged to a long-dead Breton king and was wielded by him on the day of his defeat. The shopkeeper tells you it went up for auction and he got it for cheap because no one wanted it as they thought it was bad luck. He'll sell it to you for a hefty price. Obviously, it isn't bad luck, and it just serves as a cool unique weapon that reveals a small piece of lore and comes from a unique shop in a Breton city that sells the most regal looking gear. Thinking back to the Imperial City in Oblivion, there was also a staff shop, a spell shop, a shop with other magical gear like scrolls and soul gems, and look, I get for lore reasons that obviously the Imperial City is going to be more extensive and more magic friendly than the cities in Skyrim, but that's not an excuse for a solid lack of variety across most of Skyrim cities. For example, you know the stables outside Whiterun? Well, instead of just buying a horse from there, imagine if it was the only place in the game that has a separate shop just for saddles, and you could put these saddles on your horse to grant them certain advantages, such as increased stamina, health, jump height, or even movement speed. And imagine if there were a variety of horse breeds to choose from like there was in Oblivion, and some were sturdier but slower, and others were faster but more susceptible to damage. Also imagine if there was special attention to detail in shops in certain circumstances, such as if we use Markarth as an example of what could have been, a master silversmith who actually sells a full variety of silver weaponry, as well as jewelry, so things like a silver battle axe and silver bows and arrows, and even his silver swords could have better stats than those of the silver hand because he's the best silversmith around. An Elder Scrolls 6 example of this could be if it's set around the Hammerfell High Rock region, but you can actually travel to Orsinium. Here there could be a legendary Orcish smith with the best Orcish gear available. It's simply statistically better than all the other Orcish gear in the game, and you might not realize unless you have a fine eye for detail. In Elder Scrolls 6, let's just have a shop in a random city that only sells crossbows but has a huge range of options, some unique ones and unique bolts too. And remember, you're still going to have amazing and more powerful uniques to find out in the the expansive world of the game and to collect from quests, but just chucking a unique into a shop here and there is still a solid addition on top. One final example of a unique shop that should be in Elder Scrolls 6 is something shady. So in Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion, there was a character called Shady Sam, who could be found at night outside the Imperial City, and he sold poisons and lockpicks. He was basically an assassin's dealer. There was also the Wood Elf skooma dealer in Breville called Nordenor. Then taking another example from Fallout New Vegas actually, you had Mick in the Mick and Ralph's store, who could be convinced to reveal his black market weaponry to you behind a secret wall. Let's have a shady store like this in Elder Scrolls 6, or multiple. One example could be a magic shop in a Redguard city. The shopkeeper is a Redguard mage who sells spells, but he is frowned upon by most of his city, as many of the inhabitants there consider magic to be weak and wicked. He gets by without too much hassle because he only sells destruction, restoration, and alteration spells, which the people are more tolerant of. However, if you have a high enough conjuration or illusion skill, perhaps you can convince him to show you his secret arcane items for sale, some of which are quite malicious illusion spell tomes, some potent necromancy staffs, and black soul gems too. This stuff would be hidden in his basement that he shows you as he locks the front door and reveals his obsession with Eastern magic to a fellow mage, you, who he feels understands him. So you get the idea here. Let's spice up the shops in Elder Scrolls 6, make more unique ones, and make you want to go see if there's more than just the standard alchemy stuff in the alchemy shop, or perhaps maybe there's a unique weapon at the blacksmiths. The second desire in this video for Elder Scrolls 6 is actually a return of the ranking systems that were used throughout previous games and the factions menu in conjunction with better pacing through the faction plotlines and the main story. So what do I mean by all of that? Well, in Oblivion, there was a factions menu that you could look at, and it not only showed you what factions you were in, but also what rank you were within each faction. For example, in the Thieves Guild, the ranks went Pickpocket, Footpad, Bandit, Prowler, Cat Burglar, Shadowfoot, Master Thief, and then Grey Fox. As you went through the plot, this gave you a sense of progression, and it was cool how each rank had a different symbol or icon in the factions menu. In between these ranks, you also had to fence gold by stealing items on your own, not quest related. This then ties into what I was saying about pacing. You start as a lowly pickpocket and you're called as such, and you have to progress through Thieves Guild missions while also reaching mandatory milestones revolving around actually being a thief, and then you progressed in your Thieves Guild rank. Overall, what this does for a faction is it creates a pacing system where the progression feels steady and earned, and you're very aware of where you stand in the guild. In Skyrim's Thieves Guild, you do a bunch of quests that are really fun but aren't that thief feeling, and you don't really have to steal in your spare time if you don't want to, and then you just end up becoming a nightingale. Again, it's cool, but the pacing's a bit weird. This was a frequent issue in Skyrim, also seen with the College of Winterhold. You start as a lowly student and then go on some quests, and before you know it, you're wrapped up in some events and then you're promoted to Archmage. It just felt weird, like there weren't many steps in the middle. Even the Mages Guild in Oblivion had these ranks you were rewarded with, and they were Associate, Apprentice, Journeyman, Evoker, Conjurer, Magician, Warlock, Wizard, Master Wizard, and then Archmage. Now, in terms of pacing, you were a complete noob who had to go to all the Mages Guilds in all the cities and do all their recommendation quests, meeting unique characters on the way, and truly feeling like a student of magic. Only then, after getting the respect of all the city guilds and being well-traveled as a mage, could you enter the grounds of the Arcane University, simply becoming the rank of Apprentice, and even receiving some apprentice robes for you to wear. You still felt like all the wizards here were way more powerful than you, and you'd already done plenty of Mages Guild questing, but it was only here where things really got started, and the rest of the plot opens up and things start gradually getting more serious and grave until a final resolution. The whole time you're unlocking the rest of the ranks and are very aware of where you stand in this guild. What can also be done is cutting off certain special rooms in a guild, only giving you access to them as you reach certain ranks, and also changing the person who you get your missions from too. Pacing issues also happened in the main story of Skyrim. You run out of Helgen, and one of the very early quests is killing a dragon, and then you're instantly being revered as the mighty Dragonborn. Really fun quest, but it was a very quick escalation. In Elder Scrolls 6, I'd really rather the rank system come back along with a factions menu, including including political factions, as in things like Stormcloaks and the Empire, and then slow down the pacing of everything. Let's not have our main character thrown into an urgent storyline or told he's the king of the world so early. Let's take things slow, and by using ranks, know where we stand in an organization. For example, imagine an order of knights you can join in Daggerfall, but there's 10 different ranks to go through before you're top dog, and each member of the guild treats you with slightly more respect as you slowly prove your worth as quests go by. You could use a milestone system in addition to the questing, where you also internally duel against other knights, and you must defeat increasingly difficult opponents, kind of like the arena faction in Oblivion but with an outside plot, before you can be given the next main quest in their guild plotline. The third desire for Elder Scrolls 6 featuring in this video is for the implementation of seasons, and to have dynamic landscapes which change as the climate does. So areas in the game would actually look different, whether it's summer, winter, autumn, or spring. To use an example everyone would be familiar with, look at the majestic plains of Whiterun, the flat terrain and open landscapes which just stretch out into the distance and eventually meet mountains are a truly awesome sight to behold. I imagine this is what Whiterun could look like in summer, but if Skyrim is as snowy as the lore says, imagine the dry landscapes actually become caked in snow, white fluffy wilderness stretching far into the distance. Obviously in Skyrim you'd have mountains which would be snowy all year round, which means some places can stay the same and require less work. Another example is Riften, which to me has very much an autumn vibe with all the beautiful amber forest trees. Imagine if eventually the leaves fell off in winter and the ground was covered in snow, and the buildings in and around the cities would be covered in snow too. The leaves could fall off the trees, but then in spring they come back in different color shades and so on. There are mods which implement seasonal changes into Skyrim, so we know it's really quite possible for an actual studio like BGS to pull it off. In places like Hammerfell and High Rock, things may not be as snowy as Skyrim, but at times they would be in certain areas, especially up in the mountains. It would be awesome to have seasonal changes implemented here in more ways than just the vegetation and whether it's snowing or not. For example, in Hammerfell, you could change the frequency of rainfall around coastal areas. There could be times of the year where there are more storms and things are a lot more wet, but other times where such areas go very long without any rain and the environment looks even drier and more arid. Doing this would change up the feel of certain places, incentivizing more exploration as you want to revisit the same places during different seasons, and you could enhance this even more by actually having some areas or places only accessible in some seasons. I'm thinking specifically a snowy region here, as you could have a cave up high in the outlying mountains somewhere that is snowed in during all seasons of the year, except during the middle month of summer. This would be a cool little secret to discover and would always keep you guessing as to what else could be hidden. Or perhaps you find an old rundown fort-like structure in the middle of summer, and there's quite a lot of vegetation and flowers and bushes around the place. All the doors are locked and you can't seem to find your way in. However, if you come back during autumn when much of the vegetation has died down, a trapdoor on the ground, which is actually always there if you know where to look for it, becomes far more visible, and that's the only way into this fort. Using snow again, you could even have a high up hilly area that can only be reached when a snowy hill has formed under it, allowing you to just make the jump up there. Furthermore, with seasons in Elder Scrolls 6, you could make it more interesting for characters pursuing alchemy, as the prevalence of certain alchemical ingredients would also change with the seasonal cycles. Some ingredients could be far more common in spring than in winter or autumn, and some really rare flowers could only bloom within a 3-week period of the year, just like some species do in the real world. Different animals or creatures could also increase in frequency throughout the seasons. In Hammerfell, perhaps all the insect and arachnid-based creatures like assassin beetles and giant scorpions could be far more frequent and active in summer, just how they are in the real world. Interestingly, people think scorpions just die off in the winter, but often they actually hibernate, so it would be cool if you could come across more sleeping scorpions in the winter. And this is probably a long shot, but it would be cool if they ran a bit faster in summer and moved a little slower in winter. Anyways, you get the idea here. Let's make the environmental landscapes change dynamically as the seasons do, and tastefully alter the behavior of certain creatures and the weather, the prevalence of alchemical ingredients, and even the access of special, hard to find locations. The fourth desire in this video actually comes from a viewer of ours by the name of CM Freerun. They said, I want them to bring back the fame and infamy from Oblivion, role-playing a vampiric assassin and having the people of Skyrim praise you as their dragonborn savior breaks immersion. And you know what, CM Freerun? I agree. Although I do think that if you are the famed dragonborn and nobody knows you're an assassin, sometimes we need to make a realistic exception because you shouldn't be treated poorly by a group that doesn't actually know who you truly are. For example, I hated when guards hinted you were the leader of the Dark Brotherhood. But anyways, I think in Elder Scrolls 6 it would be really cool to not just bring back fame and infamy, which is the binary system used in Oblivion, but to actually take another page from Fallout New Vegas and bring back a reputation system, which is more or less fame and infamy divided into different segments, be they towns, cities, important people, micro and macro factions, and perhaps even Daedra and Aedra. Steps would need to be taken here, however, to not be too severe. For example, it would suck if you could only do a few Daedra's quests because then the others didn't like you. What I think you could do, for example, say in Skyrim you screwed over Azura, she could just send cultists after you to attack you to represent that you've tarnished your reputation with her. But anyways, if Elder Scrolls 6 is set in Hammerfell, you'd have reputation with groups like the Crowns and Forebears, with the Alakir warriors, various warrior mage, thief and assassin guilds, and hopefully even gods within the Yakutan pantheon. Similar to the ranks within factions, I'd want this to be part of the menu somehow, so you can scroll through all the different groups you can have a reputation with and see where you stand. You'd improve your reputation by helping people from these groups and become infamous for doing what they don't like. One simple thing they did in Oblivion was not allowing you to get blessings from the shrines of Aedra in temples and such if you were considered wicked. So if you were well into things like the Dark Brotherhood and the Thieves Guild, then the Aedra would shun you. Why should you be able to just murder a whole town and then walk up to a shrine of Mara and get given her blessing? It doesn't make sense. And in Elder Scrolls 6, I would love it if Aedra, like Mara, actually wouldn't want anything to do with you if you were super immoral. The thing about gods is that they have sort of like an all-seeing eye, but towns and so forth would obviously be different. So if you murdered someone in a town in secret, it wouldn't affect your reputation unless you were caught. I just love the idea of being able to get yourself in situations where everyone in a place genuinely hates you because of the way you treated them or certain people in their community. On the flip side, you should be able to roleplay some holy paladin type character who goes around doing good deeds and feels loved by everyone. Now, when it comes to things like being a vampire, you can just use the system that already exists where people can tell you're a vampire in the later stages and may freak out, but then obviously some places, such as very accepting mages guilds or an assassin's guild, might not care at all. Anyways, reputation systems, besides being better for roleplaying, as the way you treat groups is reflected back to you, also allow for more interesting options in side quests and even the main quest. For example, imagine if Elder Scrolls 6 was set in High Rock and you end up as a significant figure in a war between multiple groups of kingdoms. It's a war over border disputes in the center of High Rock, and whichever group wins will gain control over said area. Now, wouldn't it be interesting if you've got a really good reputation with all the kingdoms you're fighting in favor of, however one of them in this allied group actually has a distaste towards you because you helped a group of bandits take over one of their outposts for a big sum of gold. What could happen is that during the war, this kingdom who doesn't like you decides to switch sides and helps your enemies, leaving their alliance with the other kingdoms who do respect you and changing the power balance of the war significantly. This could make things very difficult for you and even see the kingdoms you're trying to help lose that land they so desperately wanted to get. All in all, I want to see a reputation system implemented, whether it's with infamy and fame or newly created reputation ranks that you can access in the menu, that not only change how people in factions and communities treat you, but also how certain quest decisions can unravel. And now for the final desire, which put together with the other desires, makes a lot of this video really focused on the need for dynamic change in the next Elder Scrolls main title. So what this final wishlist topic is for the player to see more and more changes in the world around them as your choices and actions actually have an impact. Cause and effect. Cool examples of this done right in Skyrim were regarding the control of Imperial and Stormcloak territory and the changing of the Jarls as a result. Another really cool one was actually Helgen. You start there on your way to be executed, but then Alduin comes and burns the place to a crisp and you escape. If you come back to Helgen later, the gates are locked and it's now inhabited by bandits. Examples like this are cool, but they are truly few and far between. I'd love to see way more of this in Elder Scrolls 6. For example, one city in High Rock could be absolutely crime-ridden, but you help the town guard clean it up, gaining the favor of the king. Previously, you could have seen thieves running out of houses late at night, pursued by guards, as was sometimes seen in Riften, but perhaps now that occurrence is very rare. Perhaps there was a Khajiit skooma dealer in the city of Dragonstar that used to hang around the city market district at midnight, but now he's disappeared, and if you talk to him during the day, he tells you that you can find him outside the city walls late at night, as the guards on the inside have just become too vigilant. Alternatively, if you were to help the Thieves Guild expand their power in Hammerfell, then you could see more cases of burglary. Another cool example I think would actually be the ability to break prisoners out of jail and have them escape, only to influence the world in some way later. I remember playing it yet again, Elder Scrolls for Oblivion, and opening up jail cells just to have the prisoners stand there and not capitalize on their opportunity to escape. So cause and effect is a very important factor for me in Elder Scrolls 6. I want to see the effect of certain political groups I help as they expand their influence. For example, imagine helping a very religious kingdom take over another one, and the next time you come to the city, you find one of the NPCs you never really thought much of hanging dead by a rope outside the city walls. Asking the guard nearby on duty, you're told that the zealous king who took over this kingdom figured this person was secretly a Daedra worshipper. People could think the king is crazy for this decision, and residents who already lived there would hate him, but perhaps if you could break into the now hung person's house, you find a basement filled with Daedra worship trinkets and instruments, so the king was actually right. Perhaps this is even the start of a secondary Daedric Prince quest that you didn't think would happen. Imagine hearing Sheogorath's voice when you enter the basement saying, "Ah, I didn't think I'd be meeting you again so soon." Or if you hadn't done his main quest, then you'd think it was his first one, until you later discover his shrine. Other cool examples can just be from side quests. Maybe you help a wood elf steal a huge sum of money from a man he hates, and then way later on in the game, that man and his wife split up over their worsened financial situation. Or even crazier, the wife ends up killing him because she thinks he's hidden the gold somewhere for himself and some other woman. So not just cause and effect you'd expect, but also a bit of stuff you'd never see coming, kind of like in Witcher how some smaller decisions could have interesting implications later on, but nothing too annoying or game breaking. You don't want to ruin your goals because of something small, but things that are very dramatic and unique, but not actually so consequential to your main aims, would be really cool. And that concludes the latest installment in our series of 5 things we want in Elder Scrolls 6. Man, these videos really make me think about how long it's going to be until we finally get our hands on such an epic game, and if it's even as good as any of the previous Elder Scrolls main titles, I'm sure it'll be a day I'll never forget. Thank you so much for watching the video till the end, and for supporting the channel as best as you can. It's you who makes these videos possible, not just with the threats you should leave in the comment section regarding Part 7, but also through your love of Elder Scrolls and for creative discussion. Feel free to discuss any thoughts or ideas you have down in the comments below. Social media links are in the description. My name is Michael, and I look forward to nerding out with you again very soon.